Hey guys, welcome to Unit 11, Day 4, Factoring a Trinomial. All right, so what is a trinomial? A trinomial simply means three terms. So in this case, we have x squared plus 10x plus 24. Well, if a trinomial is to factor and there's no GCF, our only option is going to be two binomials. Simply means two sets of parentheses, two terms in each one. So what I like to do is I like to set up my answer. I know this is going to be my answer. And the first part of each one is pretty straightforward. You just have to figure out what two things multiply to x squared. Well, that's going to be x and x. So I usually like to get that first. Now here's where that x game comes into play that we did in lesson 3. I now need to find two numbers that multiply to 24 and will add to 10. So I'm going to do my quick t-chart over here. 24. Factors of 24. 1 times 24. 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. Now, of those four pairs, which pair add to 10? Well, obviously that's going to be 4 and 6. All right, so in the parentheses, I'm going to have 4 and 6, and that's my answer. X plus 4 times x plus 6 equals x squared plus 10x plus 24. Now, I'm going to check this first one. You don't need to do this, but I just want to show you if you're interested or a little bit unsure, how could you check this? Well, I'm just going to do FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, on these two binomials. So x times x is x squared. X times 6 is 6x. 4 times x is 4x. And 4 times 6 is 24. So now what I want to do is I want to add these two middle terms. If I do that, I have x squared plus 10x plus 24. Well, how does this compare to our original? It's the same thing. So I know that I factored this correctly. All right, let's try some examples. I want to factor x squared plus 8x plus 12. So like I said, I like to come up with the outline for my answer. I know I have two sets of parentheses. It's going to be two binomials, and I just need to take a look at what multiplies to x squared. Well, it's going to be x times x. So I usually like to get that out of the way. So now I need two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to 8. Well, multiply to 12 and add to 8. So it could be 1 times 12, it could be 2 times 6, it could be 3 times 4. Of those three pairs, which add to 8, well, 2 plus 6 does. So in the parentheses here, there's got to be a 2 and a 6. And that's my answer. Again, the order doesn't really matter. It could be x plus 6 times x plus 2, same result. Okay. Numbers are going to get a little bit bigger, and I'm going to kind of show you a shortcut that I like to use with the signs. So once again, start with the parentheses. Well, that's an x squared, so it's got to be x and x. So here's one thing I like to do. Take a look at this sign right here. If it's positive, that means you have the same signs in the parentheses, which means they could both be positive or both be negative. This sign then determines what they both are. So in this case, they're both going to be positive. So I do a quick t-chart for 50. Could be 1 and 50. Let's see, 2 and 25, 5 and 10. So I need the two, obviously, that are going to add to 15. That's going to be 5 and 10. Since I've already established that the signs are the same, both positive, I could actually put those in ahead of time and then just put a 5 and a 10 in here. That might be a little bit quicker for some of you. If not, just go through that normal process we did with the x game. All right, a little bit more challenging here because you see minus signs. So two sets of parentheses. I know that's going to be my final answer. I have x and x. So here's what I like to do to kind of make that x game a little bit easier. If this is a minus sign here, the last sign is negative. That means your two terms have to have opposite signs because they have to multiply to a negative number. The only way that happens is if their signs are different. So that's going to give me a little clue when I go to make my t-chart for negative 10. Now, the other thing I like to do is if my signs are different, this sign is going to be the sign of the bigger value. So since I like to do my smaller factors on the left and the bigger one's got to be negative, that means I have 1 in negative 10, 2 in negative 5, and that's it. That's the only combination of numbers that multiply to negative 10 where the bigger value is negative. So of these two combos, which gives me a negative 3, what's going to be these two here. So the bigger number has got to be negative. X plus 2 times x minus 5 equals that trinomial up above. All right, a couple more together, and then you can do a few on your own. Next one, I've got x squared minus x minus 20. Okay, two sets of parentheses. That's going to be my answer. Again, I've got an x squared, so simply it's x and x. That could be m squared, it could be y squared, whatever the variable is. Basically, that's what you put down in the parentheses. So now, let's take a look at these signs. If that's a minus, they're different, and the bigger one has the sign of what's in front. So two numbers that multiply to negative 20, where the bigger one's negative. 1 and negative 20. 2 and negative 10. 4 and negative 5. So I need, remember there's a 1 in front there, I need the pair that are going to combine to a negative 1. Well, that's going to be a 4 and a negative 5. So the 4 is positive, 5 is negative. There are your two factors. Okay, one more. This one's a little bit tricky. It's like that very last x problem we did in the previous unit. I know this is going to be x and x. So remember what we said. If this sign here is positive, that means I have the same signs. So they could be both positive or both negative, but check that out. That means they're both going to be negative. So when I list my factors for 18, they both have to be negative. Negative 1 and negative 18. Negative 2, negative 9. Negative 3, negative 6. So I need the pair that add to a negative 9. What's going to be these right here? A negative 3 and a negative 6. Again, I don't care what order you put those in, as long as they're both negative. Okay, so now let's try some on your own. What I'd like you to do is pause the video, try and do this problem, then resume the video and check your answers, okay? All right, so for this one here, two sets of parentheses. Again, I'm using x for all of these. Kind of boring, but whatever that variable is, that's just what you would put here. Signs are the same. Both going to be positive. So I need factors of 32. Number's kind of big. I've got 1 and 32, 2 and 16. 3 does not go in. 4 and 8, and that's it. So of those three pairs, how do you get a 12? Positive 4 and positive 8. So if you got x plus 4 times x plus 8, in either order, you did it correctly. Okay, next one here. Again, my two sets of parentheses, x again, playing the sign game. Both are going to be the same, and they're going to be positive. Okay, so that should make it kind of easy. Factors of 12, 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. I need the pair that would give me a 7. It's going to be those. Positive 3 and positive 4. Great. Let's go on to the next one. Once again, please pause the video. This is going to be a little bit more challenging because we can see we have a negative, and then come back to it, see if you did it correctly. All right, so I've got two sets of parentheses. Again, I'm just using an x, so it's going to be an x here and an x here. If this last sign, notice I look at the last sign first. That's important because that determines if they're the same, or in this case, if they're different. If that's a minus, the signs are different. And if they're different, that one tells us the sign of the bigger number. So when we do our t-chart for negative 24, and I like to put the smaller ones on the left and the bigger on the right, the bigger one's got to be positive in order for this to work. So I have a negative 1 and a positive 24. Negative 2 times 12. Negative 3 times 8. Negative 4 times 6. So of those four pairs, you've got to pick the pair that will give you a positive 2. It's going to be those right there. So when you put them in the factors, again, I don't care what order, the 4's got to be negative though, and the 6's got to be positive. Okay, a couple more. Pause the video, try this one. All right, so we've got two sets of parentheses. Again, I'm using x for all of these. That tells me my signs are different. And again, that tells me that the bigger one here is going to be negative. So 14 is kind of a nice number to factor, Bigger one's going to be negative. So it could be 1 and negative 14. It could be 2 and negative 7. I need a negative 5. It's got to be this pair here. So when you put those in the factors, I'll just show you it doesn't really matter what order. Negative 7 and a positive 2. So x minus 7 times x plus 2, that's 100% correct. When I say order doesn't matter, as long as the 2 is positive and the 7 is negative, you could put either one first. All right, the last one. Pause it, see if you can do this one. Okay, so for our final one here, I've got x and x. Notice that your signs are the same, but in this case, both negative. So when you do your t-chart for 30, these numbers both have to be negative. So it could be negative 1 and negative 30, negative 2, negative 15, negative 3, negative 10. Remember, I'm just listing all the numbers that multiply to 30, and then negative 5 and negative 6. So of those numbers, which pair gives you negative 11? Well, it's going to be these here. So it's going to be a negative 5 and a negative 6. Okay, so that concludes lesson 4. If you need some additional practice, please go back through and try these problems again. If you feel ready, you can go on to the Delta Math assignment for 11.4. And as usual, please email me or contact me if you have any questions whatsoever. Thank you.